fact that we kiss 300 people when we go into a party, and then an hour later we kiss those same 300 people when we're leaving the party. And this was we were still in COVID times, and we predicted that, or you wondered whether we as a people would change a whole lot as a result of COVID and everything that happened. What do you think? How have we changed, or have we changed at all, or have we reverted back?
I think there's times where we revert back. I think, remember that feeling when COVID was kind of done and everyone started hanging out and socializing, and just the thrill of being able to have the Shabbat dinners together and seeing each other and how wonderful that was. And I think just as human beings, we begin to take our moments and our people for granted. So I think if we could see this silver lining within COVID, God willing, no one lost close people, but it was to recognize how important that familial relationship was, the relationships we have with each other and our community. We would never have been able to do this otherwise. And so I think one of the beauties and the blessings that we have to walk away from that is to really appreciate each other and how fleeting time is with each other. And how grateful we are for this community. It's insular, which could be really suffocating, and it's insular, which could be really liberating and supportive. And I think, you know, people really realized how much they depended on their community and family during COVID.
Tabby, well, I have one question that I have to pose before we run out of time. So I really have to read this and ask you. I know we're sort of like jumping all over the place, but listen to this. So she has an advice column, and this is one reader's question. Please somebody take this, because I want my daughter to hear this too, because she complains about this every day. It feels like every day my husband gets to watch TV or take a nap whenever he wants without disruption. He's excused from bedtime because both kids, including our newborn, need me, apparently. When I ask my daughter why she doesn't wake her dad up when she needs something, when I'm also very much asleep, she said, because dad is sleeping. So, how did you answer this poor individual?
So Gina's referring to a somewhat useless advice column I have in the Jewish Journal, which is new, called Dear Tabby. There'll be a Purim edition of it next week, where I offer mostly useless responses to reader questions. First of all, I would tell you that if I had some secret for getting men, especially, God bless them, Persian men, to assume more responsibility around the house, I would be one of Tina's clients. Okay? Because I would have serious dough. You know, you should know I know the identities of the people asking the questions, but I don't reveal them in the advice column. She is a Persian girl married to an Ashkenazi man, and that really surprised me. That really surprised me. You should know, for whatever, Ashkenazim here in the audience think they know about Persians, we also have a set of, beliefs that we believe about you, and we believe that if we marry an Ashkenazi here, we might be able to do less work around the house. Right? And so I felt for her really on a double level, right? I wish I knew what I responded to her. I think, first of all, it is so liberating, and I really do use that word carefully. Not therapeutic, not helpful, it is actually liberating sometimes, that to be in her position, and that this is some advice I may have given, is to not jump to a conclusion about someone's intentions, but to be very realistic about their capabilities. Right? I am telling you, really from personal experience, the bane of my existence has often been the trash can. Certainly when I was pregnant, it was so heavy for me, I couldn't, throw it out and so on. And I remember when I was judging my husband's intentions about it, walking past this loaded trash can every day, where oftentimes more trash would be placed on top of it rather than inside of it, just like the laundry bin. I don't understand. Why don't they just... Okay. Thank you. No, I will tell you that there was a time personally when I used to judge the intentions, and I used to say, he takes me for granted, and his intentions are really to make me feel taken for granted and so on, and these are all of these intentions, ABC. And then when I stepped back and I realized the actual truth, which was we were very, very different. I was very visual, perhaps he wasn't, and he actually wasn't seeing that full trash can walking by. It's liberating. Her husband, no, was not able to put her kids to bed. That wasn't his strong suit, but she later admitted to me after that they love playing with him and they have more even fun. They really let loose with him. So again, I really believe more than anything.
Give up on the.
No, I'll tell you. I really believe more than anything, expectations kill, and that would be my biggest piece of that formula.
All right, I got the 15-minute signal, so we're gonna jump to another question. Ashkenazi versus Sephardic versus Mizrahi. We have this idea in LA, certain idea of what Israeli women are like, and do you want to marry an Israeli girl, or is she gonna be a ball buster, or do you want to, are they, is that a fair stereotype?
Yes. I'll answer regarding both men and women, since I'm married to men. It's an interesting question. So, in Tel Aviv, there's the shuk, the Carmel shuk, which is the street market, and nearby there's a graffiti mural of two cacti bandits, and they're wearing a cowboy hat, and they have the red bandana of a cowboy, and below their legs is a sign, a Tel Aviv sign, and they're pointing their pistols at each other. So clearly they're in a showdown. And I believe that I've seen it so many times, and finally I just, okay, I get it. The meaning, I think, behind that was that what the artist was trying to tell anyone passing by was, forget about John Wayne, forget about Dirty Harry, forget about any Western movie you may have seen in your lifetime, because here, Israel, that's the real wild, wild West. And so my initial impression of Israeli women and men was, strong, confident, tough, sometimes difficult, was accurate, because you need those skills to survive in the wild, wild West. And through time living there, I learned about the Hebrew word Sabra, which is the prickly, the fruit of the cactus, the prickly pear fruit of the cactus. And it's also become a nickname for Israeli Jews that were born in Israel. And just like the Sabra plant, the Israelis from the outside, they're tough, they're prickly, but in the inside, they're soft and sweet. And it's no coincidence that when you look back at the mural, you understand why he chose two cacti representing the Sabra plant and not just two Israeli guys or a woman and a man fighting. And in my book, I shared stories about the more tough side of Israelis. And I'm happy to share just really quickly one story. And I tried to do it with humor, obviously. It was my first night in my new, beautiful, brand new apartment in Tel Aviv, and I was taking a shower, and suddenly I heard a large blast. And I step out, and very soon I realize that my water heater had exploded, and within seconds my entire apartment is flooded with water. And so I call my landlord, speak up, and he arrives at a drop of a dime. And when he arrives, he tells me that your water heater exploded because I take very long showers. And he then tells me that his showers take only 7 minutes because he washes his hair and his body at the same time. And he proceeded to do one of these. I mean, literally one of these. And then he shared his bright idea to tell me to go join Gordon Gym, which is the equivalent of Equinox, because that's where he goes to take his long showers. So, you know, it takes a while, but I do get to eventually see their soft and sweet side.
Well, you were there 2 years. Did you ever see the soft and sweet side?
Very much.
No. Okay, Tina. I think I'll stop with this question for Tina. You gotta be honest. Are men generally better at money than women? Okay, come on. You know.
Actually, I think it's interesting because studies show that women are better investors than men.
Really?
Yes, women have better returns over the long term than men do. Because they don't take as many risks, but I think that's investing. I think the problem for women is that they don't take risks, so they're less willing to, and women have a lot of issues when it comes to money, so they have a longer life, they're caregivers, they have kids, they take time off, there's a gender gap in pay, so they're never getting paid as much usually. So there are a lot of challenges that women have, but when they measure actual results, women do much better, they're more careful, they do their research. So I think that's a really interesting way to think of things. But as I mentioned before, if you're not taking risks, like if I asked everyone in the audience who invested in Bitcoin, I would bet that, you know, the majority of men have probably invested in some kind of like cryptocurrency, and more women are risk averse, and they probably wouldn't take that, you know, initiative to do that. And so I think as women, we miss out on opportunities. So I think that's the big advantage, but I think that's changing over time when you have more women in leadership positions who are aware of hiring women, giving them better maternity leave, making sure that they have access to opportunities within the companies to you know, reach certain levels that in the past have been more difficult. So I would say to answer your question, I do think women are actually better, and this is proven with research that women are better investors.
We're also better at spending. Okay, I'm going to ask for questions. Please, Lisa will walk around with the mic, so put your hand up and say whom the question is directed to.
Okay, my name is Sam, and just for the records, I'm not Jewish, but I'm interested in Jewish history. My question is, somebody mentioned about Esther, and then she talked to a king, a Persian king. Can anybody elaborate the name of that king, please?
Sabra is our expert.
It's just Ahasverus. Ahasverus. It's in the Book of Esther.
So is it Cyrus the Great?
No, this is before. This is after.
And just for the sake of Tina, I want to kind of give you a fun fact that the greatest generous person in history who has done most philanthropy has got Iranian roots. And the encyclopedia says that he has distributed, you know, interpreted in today's inflation times, $102.2 billion. He stands at the top, even more than Warren.
Of his own money or somebody else's
No,
money?
he's Mr. Jamshedji Tata. They founded the Tata industry.
Tata, Zoroastrian. They're Parsis in India,
they're
in
Indian.
Mumbai.
He belongs to my community.
Yes, the Mumbai Parsi community.
Thank you.
My name is David. I'm a former Israeli soldier. And what I'd like to say, and I'd like to ask you, practically all of you, what can you possibly say or do about the family unit? Do I need to explain that? Okay, I think that just a simple example of sending your kid to a faraway university and having come home once a year or twice a year just to visit, it takes away from the actual family unit being together. I'm not against it, but that's one example of how families just separate from each other. And not only that, the usual...
let me just rephrase. So you're saying that you feel that our community is letting those ties fray over time?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Shabbat dinners, for example, are almost non-existent.
Oh my God, I don't know where you're living, but come to my neighborhood.
We have Shabbat dinners in our family and most of our extended family. My children have friends, and those friends do not. A lot of them do not have family dinners. They don't stay at Shabbat.
Okay, let's.
So it's interesting you said that. First of all, thank you for your service. And I mean that. It's interesting you said that because my first instinctive reaction was that Judaism has a built-in system for maintaining the family unit. And it's a few things. One of them is, as much as possible, that we should try to honor our mother and our father. And now that I'm older, I can really, and have my own kids, I can appreciate that more than ever. But for me, as a Persian Jew, whether in Tehran or in LA, the biggest built-in system of Judaism for family cohesion is Shabbat. And we say, as much as the Jews have kept Shabbat, Shabbat has kept the Jews. I will tell you though, Shabbat is not like the way it used to be. When I was a kid, yes, we grew up sort of traditional, non-Orthodox. We were there, our behinds were always at the Shabbat table as kids, and the Laker game was on. But today what you see and wherever I go, I see the same thing, whether at the weddings, at the Brit Milas, at the Shabbat dinners, at the Yom Kippur services. You've got our generation, like any other youth generation, with a device in their hands. And so whereas I grew up with the Laker game in the background, but the TV, the TV was there, but we were surrounded by family and we were talking to each other. And yeah, we had to listen to the adult conversations too. That to me was some of the greatest times I ever spent with my cousins and my elders and my aunts and my uncles. And now you come to a lot of the, non-Orthodox Shabbat tables that anywhere, around this country, especially for the Persian Jews, and they're there, they've said their Kiddush and their Hamotzi, but every member of that family has a device in their hands. So if you ask me, take it away, at least at the Shabbat table. Even if you're going to pose a picture of the beautiful Fesenjun and Tadig that your mother made, she doesn't need it. She needs you at that table, right? Persian Jews and their Shabbat, their Friday night Shabbat traditions are basically, I'm telling you, it is honestly one of my favorite parts of being an Iranian Jew. And I hope we don't lose that. The friends of your kids, they're Persian, the ones who are not showing up anymore? That's so sad.
Well, invite them over? Yeah? Yeah? Lisa Slade. Oh, sorry.
Can I? Okay. So I'm looking at the people who are here, and I don't see many of the millennial generation here. We do have, but not many. And I'm getting concerned about, as the parents, we are all working so hard. We have all, I believe, have wonderful, educated children, independent, working. But as a parents, how can we get the next generation involved in the Iranian Jewish community, as much as they also want to connect to other nationalities and religion and have relationship with them? But I feel like somehow, as much as we are giving the best to them, we are not getting them involved in our community. And what are your suggestions in doing that?
Can I answer that one? And this goes to a question that you were going to ask, and this has to do with education. And I think one of the biggest issues that we have is that courses like mine and other courses on Iranian Jewish history are not valued in academia. And it's what we refer to as Ashkenormative. It's an Ashkenazi-based Jewish education. So whether it is at Jewish day schools when they're younger, or whether it is in universities, where I was teaching at another university that has the largest Iranian Jewish community, and they cut all of my classes because they had one person already teaching on Iranian Jews. And this was in Jewish studies. And so this is what we refer to as being a very Ashkenormative, it's all Ashkenazi-based. So I think one of the biggest issues is that even Jewish studies departments don't value the Mizrahi narrative. I mean, how many people grew up understanding and learning the ethnic cleansing of the Mizrahi community? How many people learned about the Farhud, where literally a Nazi-style pogrom took place in Baghdad in 1941 and literally kicked out every single Jew out of Baghdad. You used to have 100,000 Jews living in Egypt, today you have 3, but we don't learn that history. And so I think number one is teaching that history, and if we should demand it of our Jewish day schools, we should also demand it from our departments and universities, and we should also be able to teach it to our kids. And I think there's also that oral narrative of being able to make sure that you talk to them about what it was like growing up in Iran, the hardships, what it wasn't, what being najas meant, what living in the mahalleh, etc. So they really take pride in their history, because we've survived 2,700 years, but most people don't even know that, especially Iranian Jewish kids.
This is one reason, I'm not just trying to put a plug in here, but one reason that I appreciate the Kazan Institute so much, that they are not guilty of this. If anything, they have always been interested in Jews of different places. And so,
another plug? The Kazan put together a book called Sephardi and Mizrahi Jews in America. Gina and I wrote for that book because they acknowledged and they recognized the importance of the Mizrahi community. And I think I hope other Jewish studies departments, centers, etc., look to the Kazan as a paragon to emulate because of that.
Also, sorry, go ahead. I'm not being facetious at all, but where's that lady? I think if you have Tina and her organization have seminars, educational seminars for the young people, they will all come in droves, and that may be a very good way to bring them all together and bind them, because it's something that most of the millennials have in common, this desire to become financially successful.
And I want to add something, which is that, look, we are going to lose some of them in our community. We are. And to think that we're not is dangerous and short-sighted. You know, I can't sleep at night for a lot of reasons having to do with October 7th, the hostages, the soldiers, how many Palestinians have been fanaticized beginning now and moving into the future. But I'll tell you something else that keeps me up at night, that I actually really do worry about the Jewish community here and around the world, is, you know what I think is happening to us after October 7th? I think we're really on the defensive, and so much of our Jewish pride has come out, but you see, so much of our Jewish pride has come out because we're literally under attack. I call this Jews being anti-Semitism. It can work in the short term. It can get a college student who would have never worn a Magen David before to wear it. But what about October 7th, 2025, and 2026, and 2030, and so on? So I really hope that as collective Jewry, we pause and we say, we have to be very careful not to be so anti-Semitism that there's no room for pro-Semitism, right? And what does it look to be pro-Semitic? It means you bring so much joy to any children, not your own, anyone around you, younger generations, older generations, college students and infants alike, right? You come to my house on a Friday, that house smells good, no matter what I've done, whether I've done takeout or anything else, because you know what it is? It's the smell of Shabbat, and it's a joy of Shabbat. My 6-year-old runs around, he goes, Mama, because that's what his voice actually sounds like. He goes, Mama, my favorite Jewish holiday is guess. And I entertain him and I go, Purim, Pesach, and he goes, no, my favorite Jewish holiday is Shabbat. Why? Because I try to create an experience in that house where I don't care if in my case, we keep the laws of Shabbat. I don't care what you do. I don't care what you observe for it. Make it smell good. Make it taste good. Make it feel good. Be pro-Semitic in your lives. And by the way, with that in mind, I want to say that my editor-in-chief, the legendary David Suissa, is right there. So if you like my writing, you go ahead and talk to him. And if you don't, you go ahead and enjoy your tadig and dignity.
Hello, hi. Thank you so much for everybody. So informative, and also a former Israeli soldier. I just tell it because that you will not be alone, you know. I was born in Iran before the revolution. Went through the revolution, the war. Escaped to Israel. I lived in Israel for many years, and then I moved here. So it's a lot of the back and forth over there. It's very familiar. And I would like kind of to address a lot of things here. When my kids were growing up, they're kind of big now, besides one of them that she's still young, we had one of the organizations, which was with Mr. David, who he passed away, and he had in his office a big picture of all the people who they came from Europe, and it was about 100 of them. And from these 100 people, only 2 of them remained Jewish, because they all had those mixed marriages and stuff like that. So he continued just to give and make sure that the children are getting connected and having connections to the Judaism. The other thing I want to say that she mentioned, I'm sorry, I'm bad with names, is that the support system we had in Iran, or even in Israel, which it was the family, the aunts, and everybody, they were all together, because it takes a village. And we learn also from our aunts, and we learn even from our neighbors. We learn from our village a lot of things. One mother can have so many.
Do you have a question?
Yes, I do have a question.
Okay, can you get to the question?
Right. And is that how the Persian Jewish, which I'm part of, stop being afraid to take stand? Because I feel a lot of times they will not take a stand. And I don't think we're in a position that we can be afraid anymore.
A stand on what?
Under political views, under Zionism, I feel that they are hiding.
I could politely disagree. I think, and I'm so proud of our Iranian Jewish young adults, because they're the ones who are on the forefront of the Hillels on college campuses, Bruins for Israel, Trojans for Israel, etc. So I see them being great leaders at a time when it's not easy to be a leader in the Jewish community and to be a Zionist in the Jewish community. So I really, really commend the young adults in our community, because they are doing amazing, amazing work. So if you go on college campuses, you will see how vocal they are and how supportive they are, and with their writings, with whether they're working with other Jewish nonprofits. So I really commend our community because they're not afraid, and it's a really scary time. So.
No one hears it. No one hears it. I don't know it, and I think other people don't know. We only hear the bad stuff.
Well, it just depends on what your algorithm is feeding you, or what newspaper you're reading, or how in tune you are with academia.
Tell me what newspaper to read. Jewish Journal. I do.
You know, if you want to see some young Iranian Jews doing great work, go follow Stand With Us, go follow HAC, go follow ADL. You will see how these young adults are there and they're really showing up.
Go on Yom Ha'atzmaut this spring. Just take a day off, make a day of it. Go to UCLA and maybe go to USC. You will just be amazed at what they're doing. Take it from me. I was a pro-Israel campus leader. I've really seen it all. I've been chased out of rooms for my own safety. One Yom Ha'atzmaut, I served as the back because I couldn't get the front. It was a two-person costume of a camel costume, walking around UCS San Diego's library walk, trying to get cake. Yeah. It's Saba's right about what she's saying. Go to UCLA on Yom Ha'atzmaut. Find out when they're doing it.
Follow Hillel. You'll see these students really doing amazing
we have
work.
one other question, or is this the last question? One.
Hi, thank you, Sean Landris. I can't help but reflect that 40 years ago I was a Hebrew school student here at Sinai, just as the first wave, not the 1950s wave, but the post-revolution wave of Iranian Jews was arriving in Los Angeles, and what a different place this community is than it was 40 years ago. So, and maybe this is a good final question. I would love to hear, as many of you who are willing, reflect on how the Iranian Jewish community has transformed the Los Angeles Jewish community and the American Jewish community. You've spent so much talking about the extraordinary wealth of the Iranian Jewish community, cultural wealth, spiritual wealth, but you've also transformed us all, and not just because I'm also looking forward to the Tanit Bar. Talk a little bit about that. How, from your perspective, how has this community transformed all of us?
This is great. I think we would love to hear from each one of you. If I may go first, there's a really good book on the subject. It's called The Luminous Heart of Jonah S. You should look it up, you should buy it, and you should read it.
I'll just make it short. I think we've helped the Ashkenazi community go back to their roots and remind yourselves of who you are and to be proud as Jews. Because I learned many lessons from my father, but one lesson that's always stood out to me is to be a proud Jew, because that's the first thing that the world is going to try to take away from you. So I think that's one thing that we've maybe bestowed upon the Ashkenazi community.
I agree, and I'll add quickly that I think it was someone else's question about the Shabbat dinners. I think one of the things that I think Iranian Jews have done is inspire a lot more people to do things like celebrate Shabbat and really rally around the community and embrace a lot of traditions, not in a religious way necessarily, but more traditional Judaism that brings you closer to your family and your and just gives you more meaning.
I concur with both, and I think, Sean, it's a great question. I think it's also reminding the Ashkenazi community of the diversity, of how religiously diverse and culturally diverse the Jewish community is, because we forget that there are just within the Mizrahi community, we're so diverse. 10 to 15% of Jews in America identify with being African American Jews, and we forget to see how diverse the community is and to celebrate that diversity.
That's such a great question, Sean. You're sitting and hearing the answer of this here at Sinai Temple right now. I remember years ago, a senior Sinai leader told me, he said, Tabby, you weren't around, but in 50 years ago, back then it was 40 years ago in the 70s, even a place like Sinai Temple so much of the young Ashkenazi members and leaders had left. And this was this person's words, not mine, that really when you went out to Shabbat services on a Saturday, you just saw a lot of sort of old Ashkenazi men. And they were worried, they were very worried. So it is with no exaggeration that I say that Persian Jewry, I believe, partly saved Judaism in the city, if at the very least revitalized it. I sort of see it that before we came here, there was a lot of oi in Judaism, and I like to think we added the joy in Judaism. And by the way, Gina wrote a spectacular essay on this. Was it the foreword? I think it was the foreword, specifically about what Persian Jews have done. She went to the levels of, supermarkets, up to the cultural centers and the synagogues and the schools and everywhere. So I'm really proud of what we've done.
Also, honest to God, we made it a much better dressed town. We did. We taught people that they don't necessarily have to stand in line just because 5 other people are standing in line. You should at least find out why they're standing in line, right? We taught them that it's okay to ask for your coffee as extra hot, no foam, 2%, no, all of those things. We're a little bit demanding when it comes to some of our purchases and orders. And overall, I always say this. I came here 2 years before the revolution, and the Rodeo Drive was one Hawaiian restaurant called the Luau on one side, and on the other side there was this little Swiss chalet kind of place that that Americans were so proud of. And as soon as Iranians came with all the food and all the desire to go out and eat and dress up and party, catering companies came out, restaurants came out. Basically, we rebuilt this city. Rock and roll. What was that song? Oh, okay. The boss Lisa says it's over. Thank you guys for your patience, for being here. Thank you to the panelists.
Before I thank everyone, I just a piece of information for all of you for our Kazan Institute. We actually have a volume that Sabra edited on Sephardic and Mizrahi Jews that you can all. We have gone to we publish every year something called the Kazan Annual on various topics in Jewish life and Jewish history. We have that volume that Sabra edited, that Gina wrote in. You can get it, you can download it for free. If you, one of two things, if you can remember Purdue University Press, go there and just type in Kazan Annual, or type in Sephardic Jews. Out will come the volume, you can download it, and in December, David Myers from UCLA is editing a volume on Haredi Jews. It'll be the first volume that I'm aware of in the United States ever to have a series of essays on the history of Haredi Jews. And if you forget all of this, if you can remember my name, Steve Ross, I teach at USC, just send me an email and I'll send you the links for everything so you don't have to worry about it. I want to thank, I know it gets confusing, right? But S.J. Ross, like my real name is Ross, right? Rosenwax. But it's worth saying a moment. I was born Stephen Rosenwax, talking about anti-Semitism. And my parents were both Holocaust survivors. And I saw in my house, there was a picture of me as a 1-year-old in the New York World Telegram. If you sent in a picture of your 1-year-old with a birthday cake, they published it. Doesn't every Jewish parent want their kid in the newspaper in a good way? So I asked my parents, wait a minute, my name's Ross, why does that say Rosenwax? And my mother said, well, people get spelled it wrong, they mispronounced it, so we just changed it to Ross. It wasn't until I was in my 20s that my mother told me the real reason they changed it was if there was ever a pogrom in America, their children would stand a better chance with the name Rost and Rosenwax. And I thought my parents were absolutely paranoid. And I am sorry to say I don't think they are paranoid. I am sorry to say. But tonight, we have talked about such a rich culture that has been underwritten, not in our city, but across the country. And you're right, it is Ashkenazi-inflected universities that have not opened up to the broad experience of Sephardic, Mizrahi, Haredi Jews. It's Ashkenazi history. And thankfully, we have Tabby, Sabra, Tina, Jasmine, and Gina all filling in some of these huge gaps for us with their unique stories, with literary inspirations, and with their life's work. And we look forward to hearing more from all of you in the future. Finally, I want to thank our partnering institutions who helped make this possible tonight, Sinai Temple and the Jewish Community Foundation, for bringing this vision to reality tonight. Your steadfast support and friendship is invaluable. And again, I have to thank my associate director. I just get up here and get to look good looking. But Lisa did all the work, and I'd love to thank her for that. And finally, I want to thank you all for coming and giving up part of your Sunday. And we want to invite you to our long talked about now, Kosher Tadik Bar, and I say, Nusa Jun Va Shab Bacher.
You hear a lot about anti-Semitism, academia, and professors who don't care. He's an amazing professor who really cares. If your kids go to USC, make sure
Grab a microphone.